What are the most important fantasy football takeaways from the losing wildcard teams of the first weekend of the 2023-24 NFL playoffs? It's time to break it down right here as the Cowboys and Eagles go down among four other teams on Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm one of your co-hosts, Vinnie Iyer. And when I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Hey, I'm Michelle Magdziuk, researcher at NFL Network and fantasy analyst for NFL.com.
Together on the show, we're your destination to become the smartest fantasy football player in your league or playing DFS year-round. We're part of Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day, your fantasy football team every day as well. We do have a busy show to get into. We're going to look at the losers of the wildcard round and look at the top reactions from fantasy football. We're going to look at what happened in their games, so that disappointed or pleased, and then look forward to seeing what they could do and what's coming up in the future for these fantasy assets and the teams in general. So we'll have fun with that. The Cowboys and Eagles, probably the biggest shockers going down, but we'll get to all the teams here on the show. This episode, Locked On Fantasy Football, is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. It's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, Michelle, let's dive right in. Now, the Cowboys, look, if you played them in DFS, you were happy in the end with Dak Prescott. He had 403 yards passing, 3 TDs. Had those 2 interceptions, one a pick six, one essentially like a pick six because it led to a Packers touchdown early and they were trailing. So that was it. The Packers could not relent that lead. It was 48-32 in the end. So a lot of points there. CeeDee Lamb ends up with 17 targets. He catches 9 for 110, but had some key drops, some weird routes early in the game. So, Michelle, look, from fantasy-wise, they came through, but is there any concern here? Just a lot of question marks on how committed maybe Dak and CeeDee are. Now CeeDee's looking for a new contract.
Yeah, and CeeDee deserves it. I mean, the thing is that stinks for Cowboys fans and the Cowboys is they finally got going. It just took them forever. Like, they could not have thought about a worse first half if they dreamed of the worst case scenario, right? Like, it took them till that final second of the first half to finally score a touchdown after their defense imploded as well in the first half. So I do feel bad. You did not imagine that game, but super happy for the Packers, and Jordan Love looked great. But yeah, when it comes to Dak Prescott, this is like, I feel it just keeps happening, right? In the playoffs, It's how long are they going to be patient with that? Obviously, he's such a good quarterback in the regular season. He's going to be back. Maybe there'll be some coaching changes, but I can't imagine they change the quarterback after Dak's great year. And then CeeDee Lamb should maybe be the first wide receiver off the board next year. We'll talk about him and some other guys here shortly, but I think he's a totally viable first option at wide receiver in 2024 drafts, as long as he gets that big contract.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that the Cowboys didn't do that we thought we're going to see a little bit better from them was the running game, right? Without Ezekiel Elliott, it was Tony Pollard, Brian Schottenheimer coming over. Technically, Mike McCarthy called the plays and took over the offense, and they went kind of pass happy once they realized their offensive line rushing attack wasn't all that effective. Tony Pollard actually finishes on a high note here. 17 touches, 85 yards. He actually scores a short touchdown in this one, which has been a struggle all season long. Now, he's a free agent. Do they move on, and are you interested if he stays in this offense the way it is?
I think they're going to have to move on, right? They're probably super happy they didn't pay him that contract in the offseason that he was wanting. They signed him to that free, what was it? The restricted free agent
or the
contract?
franchise tag.
Franchise tag. Thank you. They're probably super happy because I think he showed this year he's not very good as a lead back. So yeah, I think this was his opportunity to show he could be a lead back. And even if he does stay with the Cowboys, probably on a lower contract, and likely they bring in someone else to share touches with him, maybe that helps him. But the way we thought his ceiling could be when he owns a backfield to himself, it just wasn't there this year.
Yeah, maybe he's just a change of pace, needs another guy. And Ezekiel Elliott, by the way, is a free agent again. If they want to go out and get him from the Patriots after a pretty good season, not only supporting Mondre Stevenson, but in the end, taking over and being a fantasy asset. So we'll see. Yeah, but Tony Pollard, you just can't feel great about investing him. I think you're okay with CeeDee. Dak, we'll see. But there's a lot of fluctuation we know from the quarterback scoring from year to year. I don't see him leading the league in touchdown passes, for example. So it'll be interesting. The Cowboys have a lot of questions, a lot of things they need to answer defensively as well after that beatdown. Now, the next team that also lost, and these teams look like they were going to be battling for the Super Bowl, the Eagles go down. Now, Jalen Hurts had a pretty rough game there, 250 yards, one passing TD, only had one rush for 5 yards. And this guy scored 16 rushing touchdowns in the regular season. He just looked hurt with that finger. He had the shoulder injury from last year, the knee injury from this year. I don't know. I think those hits are starting to really add up here. Look, if he didn't have those rushing scores, which is an obscene amount, right, of 16 scores in short range, he would have been a disappointing fantasy quarterback. Now, are you feeling that he's still part of the big three, Michelle, in 2024?
It all matters what happens with AJ Brown here. It seems like there's a lot of drama happening with AJ Brown. I know he sat out. They called it a sprained knee. We never really got MRI results. Like, I don't know. He kind of deleted everything that had to do with the Eagles on his social media. So did he just not want to play? Has he given up on the team? Is he upset? Who knows? Like, if he was happy with the team, would he have pushed through this injury? We'll never know. We'll see if he requests a trade here or what happens. If he doesn't have AJ Brown next year, I'm going to have a hard time putting him up there in that top three. Luckily, though, because of how bad his ending the season was, there's a chance maybe he's a good value next year. Maybe he drops because people are scared. But since week 3, the Eagles averaged 18.9 points per game. 1-6 record during that time. Weeks 1 through 12, they were great, averaging over 28 points per game. Jalen Hurts was a really good fantasy quarterback, mostly due to his rushing touchdowns, but still, you'll take it. But since week 13, and that's a big chunk of time, they've just looked terrible.
Yeah, they went that losing streak. They were able to beat the Bills in overtime, kind of save themselves.
Yeah.
Now, looking back, it's a game they probably could have lost the way they were playing. So when you look at, AJ Brown, I don't know. Like, I would have gutted through and play. We know what Terrell Owens did back in the day. He tore up his knee and he played in the Super Bowl and almost helped them win. So kind of disappointing that Brown didn't try to go. Devonta Smith, of course, goes off in the game. He's Mr. Reliable there. But AJ Brown with the knee, I think they need to look at a third receiver too, beyond Dallas Goedert, to give them some help. So a lot of question marks there going forward with AJ Brown, a guy with a history of knee injuries, and maybe that's why the Titans were reluctant to sign him long term. He's a bit fickle, right? I mean, early in the season he was complaining about the ball, then he got fed like everything, and then he got quiet again, and then this knee injury. So a lot of weird things with AJ Brown, and I don't know, some vibes that we're not totally loving. Now, DeAndre Swift, look, he had his moments, right? He had some big games. He had that Vikings game early in the season where he dominated. And we thought, okay, he's the guy, right? They got a great value. Philadelphia native, they got him from the Lions, but he just kind of faded really hard down the stretch. And the real thing was the whole running game kind of died. Their offensive line struggle. He ends with 10 carries for only 34 rushing yards. Very rarely used as a receiver, but somehow got used here with the negative game script. 5 catches, 35 yards there. I don't know, Michelle. I don't know if he's going to be re-signed by Philadelphia. I mean, they made the right decision not bringing back Miles Sanders based on his season, but DeAndre Swift, when you look at his capacity with the Eagles, was not an upgrade from what Sanders did last year.
No, and I don't expect him to be some guy I'm looking to grab next year, even if of course, if he signs a big contract with the team or even like a semi big one for running back contracts, then maybe I'll change my mind. But it's really time for the Eagles to draft a running back as well. Bring in some young talent, do what the Lions did with bringing in Jahmyr Gibbs, and maybe also add a veteran running back as well. But I'm not interested in Swift next year, especially because, he just had receptions in this playoff game. But because of these running backs in the Eagles backfield, don't get too many receptions. You're counting on those touchdowns, which Jalen Hurts takes it all up. It's never going to be fun, I don't think, to roster a Eagles running back as long as Jalen Hurts is the starting quarterback there.
Yeah, it's very hard. I mean, you need to have like a touchdown spike the way that Sanders had last year. You're really not going to get it. And if the Eagles don't score enough, then there's not enough touchdowns to go around for Hurts and the backs right near the goal line. So that was also an issue here with the Eagles. As you mentioned, they're cooling off period from week 13. So a lot of questions going forward. We'll see if Nick Sirianni keeps his job. I think that will happen. Mike McCarthy, we'll see. But these offenses, teams, NFC East, definitely a lot of pressure going into the offseason. Now, we'll look at some other teams as well that lost and see what they're going to be doing this offseason, including Michelle Steelers. We'll do that here right after this word from LinkedIn Jobs. All right, we told you at the top this episode, Locked On Fantasy Football, is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. It's the start of a new year, so every small business owner is asking themselves the same question. What's the one move I can make that'll take my business to the next level in 2024? LinkedIn Jobs knows that your success all depends on the team you surround yourself with. That's what we have in the NFL. We all have to have winning teams, put them together. That's the same building a roster in fantasy. You want to have the right mix there that's going to be winning for you. That's why LinkedIn Jobs has created the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many qualified and quality candidates. So easy that, in fact, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number one in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn also knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resource to hire. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. Thankfully, the process is intuitive, quick, and easy. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. It's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, Michelle, it's time to finish the show, and I'm going to throw this one to you pretty quickly here. Look, your Steelers put up a fight here. They got in the game in the second half. That's all you were looking for. They got a nice special teams play that kind of sparked them and kept them around until the Bills pulled away late. 31-17 is the final. It's not unexpected, right, from this result. Tough game, and then they had to move it 2 days, and that's going to throw off a team, right? So when you look at it, Steelers, look, they kind of played with house money, overachieved down the stretch. A big part of that was Mason Rudolph's play. He ends up with a game in this one, right? He wasn't very pretty. He had the red zone interception. Now, he's a free agent. As a Steelers fan and as a fantasy person here, looking at the best option for these weapons, do you want it to be Mason Rudolph coming back on a cheap deal? Do you want to look at Kenny Pickett with a new offensive coordinator? Or you want to go out and get a Kirk Cousins, maybe Baker Mayfield doesn't want to stay in Tampa. What do you want to do with this quarterback situation?
I mean, my number one option would be to trade for Justin Fields. That's for
Okay.
sure. If my options are Mason Rudolph or Kenny Pickett, I'm picking Mason Rudolph 100 times out of 100 times. Because
Okay.
even in that game yesterday, Mason Rudolph played a fine game, I thought, compared to what we've seen out of Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky. It was still light years ahead of those two guys. Yeah, the pick in the end zone was unfortunate. That was his worst play of the game, and that was insanely costly for that game. So that stinks. But I think Mason Rudolph earned himself a nice backup contract. Like he was about to be out of the NFL, not even as a third string. People don't even want him. Now I think he gets a nice little soft, gig as a second string quarterback somewhere. Gets that contract. Maybe it's with the Steelers, maybe not. But yeah, I would love to see a new veteran quarterback or even a rookie quarterback for the Steelers this year.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of options, we know, and teams cycle through a lot of quarterbacks this year. Again, I don't think they'll spend the money on a Cousins. He's older anyway, and I don't know if you want him in this situation. Look, Mayfield, we saw a turnaround with him. Maybe it's trying to find the right coordinator that can find one of these guys like a Geno Smith or Mayfield and turn them around. So there's always the potential there. But yeah, it's hard, right? Rudolph is going to probably try to cash in elsewhere. They could also bring him back on a cheap deal, have him as a contingency plan or a bridge for Pickett if they want to stick with him in that direction. Now, do you feel better now about George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, Pat Freiermuth, just seeing their final game that they all produced in their own ways? I know Pickens didn't really go off. He lost a fumble and all that, but Freiermuth looked good. You had Deontay Johnson score a touchdown. So you feel better about these guys if they can get the right coordinator to make the most of them next year.
Yeah, definitely George Pickens for sure. He should have a really big third year as long as I mean, it's going to depend on the quarterback situation. If it's not Kenny Pickett, and pretty much if it's anyone else, I'm going to be excited about George Pickens. Deontay Johnson, he get traded. Who knows? I would actually be kind of shocked if he's still on the team next year. But
Yeah.
again, all depends on the quarterback. And Freiermuth was so inconsistent over pretty much his whole career for fantasy. He just reminds me of Heath Miller, a really solid actual tight end, not any guy you really wanted in your fantasy on your fantasy rosters, or you're not taking him early whatsoever. So I'm going to be in the same boat with Freiermuth as I was heading into this season, and it was not very high.
Yeah, I mean, they're just going to need somebody that can maximize these weapons, their play calling to get them involved, kind of make sure that these three are the main guys, right? And not extend too much so they're in the pocket of fantasy targets that you're looking for. So, look, they might expand Calvin Austin's role and maybe go 11 personnel. They could have Freiermuth on the field, but there are a lot of good offensive minds out there. They need to bring in one because overall, if they keep all three, these are still three talented guys if they can get someone who can connect. Now, Najee Harris, look, we were big on him. You really liked him in this game. Unfortunately, they got behind and became more of a Jalen Warren type, give him a few touches here while we're trailing type of game. Now, Najee Harris, are you still feeling him as an RB2? I'm a little skeptical, I think. I know he was terrible early and really came on, but I guess this is going to be your backfield going forward of Harrison Warren.
Yeah, if you can grab him in late round 3, round 4, I'm going to be open to him again as long as it's not Kenny Pickett. He's never going to have a super high ceiling, but as long as they're not getting murdered like they were in this game early on, he should have pretty nice volume. And sometimes that's what you need as your RB2 in your fantasy leagues.
Yeah, and that's probably his ceiling right now until we
Yeah.
see anything else. Maybe they upgrade the offensive line. I don't know if I would still go there. It just depends on how this offense play calling plays out and what kind of scheme they're running with run and pass. Now, it was a rough ending for the Dolphins. I can't believe this is a team that scored 70 points at one point this season. They scored 7 in this playoff loss. The Chiefs defense, we know, was pretty darn good. Up front, Chris Jones, George Karlaftis, L'Jarius Sneed did a great job on Tyreek Hill in this game to contain. Now, Tua Tagovailoa, there's just so many negative feelings about him, right? He doesn't even get to 200 yards passing, 199, 1-1. He strangely has 25 yards rushing when he's not a very mobile guy. I don't know, Michelle. I mean, the Dolphins fans, again, are having a referendum a little bit on Tua and his future. I don't know if I can invest him in fantasy. I think they're going to have to get some help. And I don't know, like just having 2 receivers there. And if one guy gets hurt or you face a tough matchup, it's over. And the better teams, better defenses, he just doesn't seem to be viable at all in fantasy.
Yeah, they need to add a tight end and a wide
Yeah.
receiver 3 that's, at least a safety option that you can rely on, a veteran slot player or something like that for him because Jalen Waddle gets hurt every single game. I brought that up. He may
Yeah.
not miss the game, but
Yeah.
he's always injured. So you need someone else besides just Tyreek Hill. Tua just completely collapsed towards the end of the year. Final 3 games, including this playoff game, he's had 4 passing touchdowns to 5 interceptions total over the last 3 games, averaged 203 passing yards per game. So just absolutely atrocious numbers here by him. And then anytime this Dolphins offense played a good team, a team that had a winning record, they couldn't do anything. They averaged 16 points per game in those games as an offense when in all the other games against the bad teams, they averaged 35.5 points per game. So just completely beat up on bad teams this year, just struggled so hard against good teams. I don't know where to take that for next year.
Yeah.
Are they going to continue that or getting more help for Tua? Does that change some things? Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, they want to model themselves off the 49ers offense, but the biggest difference is they've got the 3 weapons there, plus running back who can take over games that is very special as a receiver. So it's a big, big difference. Now, speaking of running backs, I mean, Raheem Mostert, okay, look, I know this. He's 31 years old. He wears his jersey number. He's old. He's got a lot of injury history. There's no way we know. It's the Jamal Williams effect, right? You're not going to duplicate a ridiculous touchdown season as a running back, especially at his age. Now, look, we know we're going to fade Raheem Mostert. And in relation to that, how much are we going to spike Devin Chan? I mean, you look at him and look, he had his opportunities here, 9 touches, 30 yards. He got involved a little bit in the passing game. Mostert ends like probably the way it's heading next year. 8 carries, 33 yards. He had a negative reception and no TDs in this game. So talk to me about a little bit about where you're seeing this Dolphins backfield. And is that fair to do? Just say you're going to fade Mostert no matter what and look at a Chan as a high upside guy.
Yeah, I think I am going to fade Mostert unless he goes super, super late and they don't add anyone
Yeah.
else. I think Achan has one of the biggest question marks right now when it comes to what will his draft price be
Yeah.
next year. Like, who do they add in this backfield? What type of player do they add in the backfield? So much can change with what his projected draft cost is. But I think if it stays around that 5th round or somewhere reasonable where it doesn't spike up too crazy, I think he's going to be a really nice option to have a super high ceiling in any, for any given week, but also just for the full season. And actually, maybe he doesn't need to be a 300 plus touchback to do that. He just has to be a little bit more consistently involved in his second year than he was in his rookie season.
Yeah. Look, it's going to be a little bit of a boom or bust pick. I would lean toward boom, right? He's got that explosive talent we've seen in games, and he has to stay healthy himself. He missed some time. So it'll be interesting, right, to see if they add a back to change things. Because Jeff Wilson Jr., Raheem Mostert, HN, you cannot rely on any or all of those guys to stay completely healthy. They all missed time this year. So something to look at there for sure. Now, we will get into our final 2 losers from the wildcard round in our final segment there, the Rams and the Browns.
Yeah, before we do that, let's talk about another 2 of our great sponsors. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is super easy to use, and there's so many different ways to bet. You can find bets in the new Explore tab, or you can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, which is the best way to find popular parlays. And you can even make in-game wagers and live same-game parlays. All you have to do to get started is visit FanDuel.com and use promo code LOCKEDON to get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Again, just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. This episode is also brought to you by Jace Medical. I know we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of real life, but can we just talk for a minute about preparing for real life? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. That is scary. I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if my wife or one of my nieces or nephews got sick while a supply chain issue kept them from life-saving medication that they needed. Thankfully, we'll be okay because of Jace Medical. The Jace case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinus infections, skin infections, among others. This stuff could happen to any of us. Visit jacemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. So go to jacemedical.com and use offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. That's jacemedical.com, JASE medical.com, and use offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. All right, let's hop into these last 2 losers from Wildcard Weekend. We got the Rams, pretty much the only good game of the week. Rams versus the Lions. It was a close one, 24-23. Puka Nacua went off. Matthew Stafford had a solid game, but the Lions just slightly outdid him here. Puka Nacua, how early is too early to take him? Because of course, he breaks the record for most receiving yards by a rookie in a single playoff game. Because why wouldn't he? He broke every other record.
Yeah, this dude is just unstoppable, it seems like. I mean, he gets downfield, he's big, strong, he blows by people, he spins around people. I mean, he's a special receiver all around. There's nothing fluky about Puka Nacua, and guess what? His role can only get better and expand. Now, Matthew Stafford is a bit of a wild card, but it looks like Stafford's going to be back, right? I mean, the way he played this year, he didn't look hurt. He looks healthy, good. Why wouldn't you want to keep playing for Sean McVay? And it's a good passing game. So when you look at that, I mean, yeah, going back to CeeDee Lamb, I think you definitely start there, right? At receiver and Justin Jefferson still, assuming Jefferson's fully healthy. And then Tyreek Hill is going to be in the conversation, as we mentioned. But Puka Nacua is right up there. I mean, he's going to be a dominant number one for the Rams because, look, you also have to consider Cooper Kupp, right? Only 5 of 27 there, or 5 catches, 27 yards, 9 targets. When you look at Puka, what did he do? 9 for 181 and a touchdown on his 10 targets. He was more efficient. He was better. He was more dangerous. He was the go-to guy. I don't think people down the stretch were saying, we got to stop Cooper Kupp. I think they're like, Puka's going to kill us if we don't protect against a big play. This guy is just a beast. I mean, when you look at traditional number ones who dominate and put up big numbers, Puka Nacua has got it all. The speed, size, strength, all the things you're looking for. Kupp kind of broke that mold, right, in the slot and dominating. So, look, Puka, I think there's a conversation piece there. We'll see how high he can go, but I think he's definitely an elite top half wide receiver one.
Yeah, he's going to end up going in the first round. I think he's going to be one of the more riskier picks
Yeah.
because so much of it is going to depend on Matthew Stafford's health. But that's hard to really go by because, I mean, Kirk Cousins is never injured, right? So you're like, oh, Justin Jefferson's safe. And then he loses Kirk Cousins. So you can lose any of these guys to lose their quarterbacks. Matthew Stafford does feel a little bit riskier. And so much of this Rams offense is having Stafford healthy and out there. But Nacua, especially Cooper Kupp, like you said, are getting older. Who knows if he's going to retire or whatnot or be with the team next year. But Nacua is going to be a first rounder. And then are they going to have 2 first rounders next year? Because how high will Kyren Williams go next year after what he's done this year?
Yeah, I'm gonna press pause. We talked about this. We looked at those breakouts. I just want to see a little bit more, and this is what kind of concerned me, right? A smaller back, got a little bit banged up in this game. They had to use Ronnie Rivers more than they would like. And if they could have stuck with Kyren Williams, he ran really well. And you mentioned this, Michelle, like you weren't afraid of the Lions matchup. He was running well that. I mean, 13 carries for 61 yards is a very strong average, 4.7 yards per carry. Even got a catch in this game. So when you look at it, Kyren Williams is for now the feature back. Now we're going to have to watch what the Rams do in the backfield, if they do anything crazy and McVay gets a little fickle, he wants to go in a different direction, or he wants to bring in a power back to ease some burden off Kyren Williams. All these things could happen, but as it stands right now, I think Kyren Williams to me is definitely in the RB1 conversation. I don't know if I would draft him, right behind Christian McCaffrey, but I think based on the volume, based on his role, I think you have to look at him as an upper half starter at that position.
Yeah, it's good. The whole top 5 running backs this year for rankings for the 2024 season is going to be very interesting because we just saw so many running backs struggle this year or get injured or just not get the consistent volume. So I think we're going to see a lot of differences in people's running back rankings for next season. That will be a really fun discussion to just have all off season long.
Yeah, for sure. And one discussion we might have is how high to take Nick Chubb off the knee injury, but Kareem Hunt finishes. I know there was a lot there working for the Browns in that 46-14 loss to Texans, but Kareem Hunt's a free agent, so Nick Chubb would seem to be in a great position to have a big rebound season, assuming he's healthy. Now, my question is David Njoku and Amari Cooper, right? Njoku, I think, is here to stay, but Joe Flacco was a big part of it. Amari Cooper also benefited a lot from Joe Flacco. Now, Amari Cooper turns 30. David Njoku is in his prime. Where are you kind of feeling out these guys next year, Michelle?
Amari Cooper will still be there in the late wide receiver 2s, early wide receiver 3s. Definitely, like he's getting older as well. And is Deshaun Watson ever going to actually play a full season with the Browns? We'll see. David Njoku is going to go way too high for me next year. And it was all because of the end of the season with Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco loves tight ends. He averaged 18.2 points per game with Joe Flacco. Cool. He averaged 6.9 with Deshaun Watson, 6.6 with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and 7.0 PJ Walker. He had so many bad games before week 14. Week 14 to week 18 is the only reason he's ranked or he finished highly because the NFL season's so short. It's a small sample size, but that can skew anything, especially at the tight end position when so many tight ends are, really poor for fantasy. So yeah, David Njoku looks like he finished with an amazing year, But I don't think if you drafted David Njoku, you had him on your team by the time he went off because
Yeah.
he was doing what he normally does, not much of anything.
Yeah, I'm not even excited because Harrison Bryant is a free agent, right? I'm just not going to. I don't know. I don't know if I want to attach myself too much to the Browns. I think when their offensive line comes intact, Nick Chubb is healthy. Guess what they're going to do? They're going to run the ball, be more about that, and Joke is going to go back to blocking more. I don't know. There's so many variables here that I think I want to stay away. I want to reassess, right? I want to take my time, look at the Browns, see what happens. Chubb's health, Jedrick Will's health, Jack Conklin's health. Then we'll come back. Is Watson going to play? All that good stuff. So, yeah, look, it's good Flacco effect for fantasy, but otherwise out on the Browns, I think.
Yeah, I'm with you. There'll be a lot changing there. I feel like just obviously with Deshaun Watson, but just they have to add other wide receivers. Who knows if they bring in another running back in case Nick Chubb isn't fully ready to go. They probably make a lot of changes in terms of their player personnel headed into next season.
All right, so that wraps up this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football. We'll turn our attention next to the divisional playoffs. We'll look at what's happening on Saturday. We'll look at what's happening on Sunday, put together DFS and price picks and all that for you this week to close the show. For this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football, this has been Vinnie Iyer.
And I'm Michelle Magdziuk. Bye, y'all.